Hi, and welcome to the Guitar Learning Show. This is Kevin, and today I'm going to go over a simple lesson on triads for beginners. So this is a second in a series of 3 lessons. Each lesson will be broken down by string set. So we've already covered strings 2, 3, and 4 in a previous lesson, and I'll link in the description to that lesson so you could check that one out too if you haven't already watched it. In today's lesson, we're going to go over strings 1, 2, and 3, and we're going to look at triad inversions and also triad construction from a key. And please hit the like and subscribe button and ring the notification bell. Okay, well, let's get started. So to do a short review on chord construction, a major chord in its most basic form consists of the root, which is also called the 1. It's the 3rd and the 5th. So you just have those 3 notes. All right, so for example, the key of A consists of the notes A, B, C sharp, D, E, F sharp, and G sharp, with A as our root, or of course the 1, B is 2, but then C sharp is 3, so that's the second chord tone, D is 4, and then E is 5. So that first, which is the A, the 3rd note, which is the C sharp, and then the E, which is the 5th, those are the 3 notes that make up our chord. Looking at this on the high E string on the fretboard, the A is at the 5th fret, and then the C sharp is down here at the 9th fret, and then the E is right here at the 12th. So our A chord is A, C sharp, E. We can't play that chord in a linear manner, so we have to play it on multiple strings. To demonstrate how our major chord is made up of only those 3 notes, though, let's take a look at an open A chord. The notes of the chord of the triad, as we just went over, are going to be A, C sharp, and E. And so for this chord, we're going to grab we're going to have an open A string, which is our A note, of course. And then on the D, we're going to play the E. It's going to be the E note because we're fretting our 2nd fret on that string. And then down on the G string, we're going to hit the A, so that's a 2nd A note in that chord. And then down here on the B, we are going to play the 2nd fret also, and that's our C sharp. And then you can play the high E string, and then to hear that all together, so that's our A chord. But the only notes in all 5 of those strings are A, C sharp, and E. So just to demonstrate the point that you only have those 3 notes to make up a major chord. Now there are other chords that get a little bit more complicated than that, but a basic A major or A minor or any key major or minor chord is going to be just 3 basic notes, okay? And so what's great about playing chords on only 3 strings is, especially if we're playing in a band where the bass player and the drummer they're laying down the low end, so they've got the, you know, so we don't have to worry too much about playing full chords on all 6 strings. We can just play chords on just 3 strings. So it's important also to be able to navigate the fretboard in order to know where the root, 3rd, and the 5ths of these chords are. So we need to know, unfortunately, I mean, eventually we're going to have to know all of the notes on all the strings on the fretboard. But that could take a very long time. Some people spend years doing it. But if you know all of the notes on the low E string and you know all the notes on the low A string, there's a couple of tricks that you can use to find notes that are down here on the D string or on the G string. So those tricks I was talking about to find notes further down the fretboard, or further up, I should say, on the higher strings, is, so for instance, on the E string, if you know that the third fret of the low E is a G note, and if you go over 2 frets from the G, you go over to the A, and then you go down 2 strings, okay? So we're at the 5th fret, and we are on the 4th string, which is the D. That's also a G note. And that pretty much is the same all the way up the fretboard. So for instance, if you're here on the 8th fret and you're playing a C, and then you go over 2 frets and then up 2 strings, so that's our C. And we can locate a root note or whatever note you're looking at. But usually we're looking at root notes on the D string by just knowing everything on the low E string. And another benefit is if you happen to know all of the notes on the low E string, well, the high E string is exactly the same. So that's a G, that's a G, that's a B, and that's a B. So if you know the low E string, you know the high E string, you've essentially got 2 for 1, okay? And then on the A string, that exact same rule applies. So if you're on the A string and you apply that same rule that we apply, if you're on the A string and you apply the same rule that we apply to the low E, let's go to the 5th fret, that's a D. And then if we go 2 frets over and then 2 strings down, and that works the same anywhere on the fretboard. So if we know all of the notes on the low E and the A string, then we can pretty much quickly find the notes on the D and on the G. And that becomes really helpful when you're playing triads, especially if they're rooted on the D or the G. Another trick that you can use that will help you identify notes on the B string is using the C caged shape chord. And that is essentially, if you take your middle finger and let's take just the 5th fret on the B string, okay? So we'll play that note. Now if we just set up a C-shaped chord, and I went over this in the first triad video, so be sure to check that out. If you put your index finger on the 3rd string, on the G string, on the 4th fret, and then put your ring finger on the D string on the 6th fret, and then your pinky goes right up here on the A string on the 7th fret, okay? What we're really concerned about here is our pinky and our middle finger. So the pinky is playing on the 7th fret, and that's an E note, okay? And then down here, our middle finger, which is on the 2nd string, which is the B string, that's also an E note. And if you don't want to think of this in the terms of it just being a C-shaped chord, you can just think of it, well, put your pinky here, and then go down to the B string, which is 3 strings down, and then go 2 frets up towards the headstock. And that works all over the fretboard. So if you know that this is an A up here on the 12th fret on the A string, then you know that here on the 10th fret, using your middle finger, you know the 10th fret B string is also an A. So A, and then up here E on the A string, 12th fret, A. So those are just a couple of tricks that you can use to basically find root notes all over the fretboard, because with the triad inversions, the roots are on different strings. I probably said this already, but one of the great things about triads is that they are simpler versions of full chords whether they're open chords or bar chords or cage-shaped chords. However you want to look at the chords, okay? They are movable just like a bar chord. So you can take a triad and, you know, you've got a D here. You can move it, you know, here, and that's a G. And, you know, you just have to know, of course, your roots, and because your chord name is based on, of course, the root note of the chord. So a major triad is going to consist of a root, third, and fifth, and a minor triad is going to consist of the root, a flatted third, and a fifth. So if you can find a major triad and you know which note is your third, you can easily just go towards the headstock, one note with that, and you've now made the minor triad. So you don't even really have to, in the beginning, you don't necessarily have to even memorize minor triads. You just have to know how to make it from a major triad. So to begin with, let's take a look at triads. So to begin with, let's take a look at triads in the key of A, okay? So we're going to start with we're going to work off the high E string initially, and our A is the 5th fret. And this is essentially the root version of the triad. And what you would do is you would use your index finger to bar strings 1 and 2, and then you would use your middle finger to play string 3. And then your the high E string, which is string 1, that's your A, that's the root. The high E string is your A. And then your the next string up, the string 2, that is your C sharp. That's a lie. Have I been doing this right? That's not right. Okay, so to begin with, we want to play the root version of the triad. I don't want to mess this up. No. I know I'm right, but... No, I get you. Just checking the camera here. Yep, so hard. Okay, so now that we've talked a lot about triads, I'm going to demonstrate some on the guitar, and we're going to take a look at triads in the key of D, okay? And we'll start with the root, then we'll look at the first inversion, and then we will look at the second inversion, okay? So there's essentially 3 shapes. We're going to go over major and minor triads. There's also augmented and diminished. We'll save those for a later video, and we'll keep this one short. All right, so a root triad in the key of D, the first thing we have to do is find the D that's going to be on the string 3, okay? So that's going to be on the G string. All right, so we want to find the D on the A string, okay? We can just go, well, A, B, C, and then D, and we know we're at D. So using the 2 fret over, 2 strings up, we're going to go 2 over and then 1, 2 up. And that is our D rooted on the third string. So the first triad shape, you're going to put your ring finger on that D note, okay, which is on the 7th fret of the third string. Your pinky is going to go just under it, although some people can play it with the middle finger on the G and with the ring finger just below it. But what I like to do with the, my hands are kind of small, so I like to do it with the ring finger and the pinky, all right? And then you stretch down here to the string number 1, and that's the 5th fret, and that's the A note. And then this is your D triad. So we have, from the 3rd string down, so that's root, 3rd, and 5th, okay? So that's D, F sharp, and A, because we're working with a D chord in the key of D, all right? So the nice thing about triads is they go kind of in order. Hopefully I can explain this well. But I had just said it went downward or upward, depending upon whether you're thinking about pitch or direction. So if you're going from string 3 to string 1, it's root, 3rd, 5th, just one after the other, okay? Well, let's take a look at the second inversion. And that basically means that the root is going to move one string down because we're headed towards the 1 string, right? So we're going to go from the D being here on the 3rd string, and now we're going to go to the D on the 2nd string, and that's going to be here at the 3rd fret. So when I mean that they kind of go in order, they go down towards the 1. So if our root's now on the 2nd string, that means that our 3rd is now going to be on the 1st string. But the shape here, you're going to put your ring on the root on the 3rd fret, 2nd string, and then you're going to put your ring on the 1st string of the 2nd fret. So we have root, and then you've got to cycle all the way back to the 3rd string for the 5th, okay? So that's going to be 2nd fret, 3rd string, and that will be our 5th note. So that's D, F sharp, and then A. And that's a D chord, and it sounds like this. And that's the D chord that we all pretty much learned when we first started playing guitar, and that's, of course, one of the open chords. But that D is movable. So if you go up 2 frets, it's an E, and if you go up 2 frets, it's an F sharp, and if you go up 1 fret, it's a G. I mean, you get the point, right? So that is the first inversion. So the first inversion is going to be rooted on the 2nd string. The root is going to be rooted on the 3rd string, all right? So what's left? What's left is going to be the second inversion, which is going to be rooted, yeah, you guessed it. It's going to be rooted on the 1st string. So we just need to find a D note on the 1st string. And if we know the notes of the low E string, we know that the D is rooted at the 10th fret. And since the high E string is exactly the same as the low E string, then we know that the 10th fret is our D note. It's our root. So the shape's a little bit different than the other 2 shapes. So we're going to use our index finger, and we're going to bar the 1st string of the 10th fret and the 2nd string of the 10th fret. And then we're going to use our middle finger, and we are going to put that on the 3rd string of the 11th fret, okay? But the root, remember, the root is down here on the 1st string. So that's our D, and then to get to the 3rd, we've got to cycle back up to the top, to the 3rd string. That's our F sharp, and then the next one down is the second string, and that's our A. And then that D chord sounds like this. So if we were to just play all the Ds, all the D triads, I should say. And I'm sure you can recognize that those all sound like D chords. They're all D chords. And those are all part of more full-shaped chords. You can make, for instance, in that last shape, that's part of an E, a full E chord as a full E bar as a cage-shaped chord, okay? So that you could play. Of course, we're not doing cage today. I just want to throw that out there in case that's something you want to look at, or just so at some point down the road you tie these things together. And the other shapes, the other inversions, they're also part of bigger chords in the cage shape. So we as triads, we're just playing the root, third, and the fifth. And it allows us to be able to just very easily move around and play these chords. And as I mentioned before, if you're part of a band and somebody's playing drums and somebody else is playing bass, as the guitarist, you could get away with playing the triads. And as a beginning guitarist, they tend to be easier to move around. I find them easier to move around because you're only dealing with 3 notes. You're either dealing with 2 or 3 fingers most of the time. Sometimes you're only dealing, in my previous lesson where we went over strings 2, 3, and 4, you could bar some of these triads, like that's a D triad right there. All right, but as always, I digress. I don't need to go over that. That's in the previous lesson, which will be linked in the description below. All right, so now that we've gone over the triads and the inversions as major chords, let's check them out as minor, okay? So let's start out with the D major. And of course, because this is the root is on the 3rd string, and I had said that the triads go first, root, 3rd, 5th, going towards the 1 string, okay? Although if the root's lower, then they circle back. So they're kind of in order, at least the way I think about it, they're in an order, okay? So we're going to take our pinky, which is our F sharp, we just need to flatten that to an F. So we're going to go from that to that. So all we're going to do, fingering wise, is our ring finger is going to be on the 7th fret of the 3rd string. Our middle finger is the 2nd string, and that's going to be the 6th fret. And then the index is on the 1st string, 5th fret. And the minor D sounds like this. So major D, happy, happy. And that's a little more sad. Okay, so that's the root. And then the first inversion, of course, is the D that we all learned when we first started playing. And that one, again, that one is rooted on the 2nd string. So we play that with our ring finger. And we're going to leave our ring finger there. But since the 3rd is down here on the 1st fret for the major chord, we're going to have to move that F sharp down here to F, which is the 1st fret. So instead of having our index finger up here on the 2nd fret, 3rd string, we're going to have to move the index finger to the 1st string, 1st fret, and then we'll replace that 3rd string, 2nd fret with our middle finger, okay? So that D minor is going to look like this and sound like this. So D major, D minor. Now here's a quick tip. If you need to switch from D major to D minor, leave your ring finger anchored here on the 3rd fret, 2nd string, and just move your index and your middle. So here's D major. And then I'm just flipping these 2 fingers, D minor. So major, minor. So that's pretty quick and pretty simple. And if it's a little bit, everything in the beginning takes time. So if you just practice making that flip slowly, eventually you'll get really fast with it. So from there, that's the first inversion. Let's take a look at the second inversion. The root for the second inversion is on the 1st string. So we know that if we know that the low E D note is up here on the 10th fret, and we know that the high E string is the same as the low E string, then that we're going to be on the 10th fret also for the root. And if you remember, that major chord is played with the index finger barring strings 1 and 2, and with the middle finger playing on string 3. And so here's the major, D major. And so all we're going to do is take the 3rd and move that to the 10th fret. So our root is down here on the 1, and so the 3rd, the next number in the chord, next note in the chord, it's going to circle up to the 3rd fret. So to make that minor, we're just going to, instead of playing the 11th fret, we're going to play the 10th fret. So we'll go from here to here. And then this one we could just bar. So I'm using my index and just barring. So you can very easily, even if you had to go from the D major to D minor, is you could bar these 3 strings and then just put your ring finger down on the 11th fret, 3rd string for your major chord. Lift that ring finger off, and you're playing your minor. So that's pretty much it. So that's how those triads are constructed, major and minor, on strings 1, 2, and 3. Okay, and when you can play those things, when you know where to find your chords or how to make your chords, or at the very least just how to finger the triads and just memorizing where some chords are located, you can play some cool stuff like Islands in the Sun, for instance, by Weezer. So that's one, or another one that I'm kind of working on, so don't judge too harshly. But our band is going to start playing "End of the Line" by the Traveling Wilburys. If you've ever heard of that, or even heard of that band, that's awesome. Drop us a comment down below and let me know if you know who the Traveling Wilburys are. And if you do, tell me who your favorite Wilbury was, and also which album was your favorite. There's just a lot of fun stuff you can do by being able to play triads. So I'm sure you'll recognize this. All right, so that is our lesson today on triads on strings 1, 2, and 3. They're a great way to learn the notes on the fretboard. It gets us out of this area where we learned all the open chords, helps us to move up and down. As I mentioned, triads are movable, just like bar chords. You can move, all the way up and down the fretboard, which is pretty fun. It gets us, like I said, it gets us out of this neighborhood up here and doing more stuff. They are a smaller part of the of bar, cage, or open chords, whatever you want to call them, because they're all essentially, bar, cage, and open chords are essentially the same thing. It's just how you look at them, how you identify them. And then triads will allow you to play chords with less finger manipulation. So you might be able to make chord changes a little bit faster. Some of your notes might be cleaner. You know, initially when you're first learning guitar, you really got to latch on to any trick that you can find to help you play certain songs. So as you get better, you're just able to expand your skill set. And anyway, I hope you've enjoyed this lesson. I hope it's helpful for you. And if you haven't already, please hit the like and subscribe button and notification bell, and this way you'll be notified. And if you have any comments for us, I'd just drop them down in the comments below. And that's all I have for you today on this lesson on triads on strings 1, 2, and 3. I will see you in the next video.